Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of ScrivTalk. I'm your host, Liana George, author and co-owner of Scrivenings Press. And today I'm thrilled to be joined by another Scrivenings Press author, Brett Armstrong, whose long-running fantasy series, Quest of Fire, is reaching its dramatic conclusion with the release of The Unending Light, Book 7. Yes, you heard that right, Book 7 in the series. This is like epic fantasy here, folks. It's the kind of sweeping, noble, bright fantasy that blends dragons, spiritual allegory, timeless centuries apart, timelines, and characters whose courage is tested in world-changing ways. So, Brett, welcome back to Scriv Talk. You were here back in the summer, right before the release
Yeah,
of your novella collection, but I'm so glad to have you back. Just you this time.
yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. So let's start with big picture here, because I just came onto the picture with Scrivenings um, in this role back in August, which was way before any of your other six books had already come out. So we need to do a little bit of catch up for me and for our viewing audience. So this is book 7, The End.
hmm
It's a culmination of a story that's been unfolding across two timelines, two young
Yep,
heroes, and a sprawling conflict between light and darkness, which
yep.
sounds really, really cool. But those who are new to this Quest of Fire world, can you give us like in a nutshell version of the series and what the overarching quest is all about?
Yeah. I can attempt to. I'm not great at condensing my words, obviously. Uh,
Yeah, these are like 400-page books, y'all.
yeah, yeah. And but yeah, so the world Quest of Fire is a lot like our world. And that's kind of how I try to build my story worlds is I start with things that are familiar and recognizable and then start to layer on things that are unique and fantastical and stuff to kind of like give people a grounding and then start to show them something new. So the main fantastical element of the Quest of Fire world is that certain spiritual realities are more physically represented in their world. So, like, you take like Ephesians chapter 6 and the armor of God,
Mhm.
instead of it just being, spiritual representations, there's actually physical, like, armor and weapons that they use. So, they wield something called a spirit sword, which is modeled after the sword of the spirit.
Mhm.
And each night, whenever they hold it, it catches fire along the blade, and it has its special inscriptions from the High King. And a lot like our world, their world is in rebellion against its rightful ruler, and that's the High King in this story. And as the knights start to learn more about the heritage they have, especially Jason, as he especially learns about what others have gone through before him, he starts to understand more about how this like centuries and millennia old conflict between people's resistance to the High King's rule and his unassailable right to rule have kind of shaped conflicts and shaped their world to where it is now.
Mhm.
And both of the main protagonists, Anargen and Jason, each kind of are trying to figure out like where they fit in this greater tapestry of this like ongoing quest that's been, like I said, going on for millennia. And I think one of the most fun things about it was where I was trying to like figure out motifs and themes and stuff like that. One verse stuck out to me, and that was that our God is a consuming fire.
Mm.
So that's why the spirit swords burn. That's why it's the quest of fire because it's the quest for the one who is a consuming fire.
Mm.
And appropriately enough, the an Arden starts off as a blacksmith's apprentice. And part of why I like the motif of fire and I like the idea of fire is that, it purifies things and it helps to shape things into the form that they ultimately need to take. And that's kind of what the quest of fire is all about. It's about shaping everybody into the person that they're supposed to be. And
Okay, I like that. That's good. Okay, very interesting. Now, it's got dual timelines. Every book
mhm.
has dual timelines. What are the different timeline periods and Why did you go with those?
Yeah, so in Anargen's timeline, it's a rough equivalent to the early Enlightenment, so about the 1600s of our world.
Hmm.
And then Jason's timeline is more like the 1920s.
Okay.
And part of the 1920s timeline was there. I just never read any fantasy set in that setting, and I thought it would be really cool to have like guys wielding swords, but they were also riding trains and there were airplanes and cars and stuff. So it was a nice juxtaposition.
Yeah.
But the other main, the core heart of it is the whole series is kind of about how stories shape us.
Hmm.
So it's a story about storytelling, and whenever Jason comes into this whole thing he doesn't know any of about anything. You know, he's coming in, he's running from his past, and at the start of book one, he's just like looking for a place to, kind of rest up before his journey continues way, way away from where he ends up.
Hmm.
And he hears this storyteller uh, talking about this knight who lived, about 400 years before him, and he thinks it's all, kind of make believe and all that stuff. But the longer he hears it, the more he's like, well, this, the way he's telling this doesn't feel like a myth. It doesn't feel like a legend. Like it feels like this guy really believes this. And then, of course, over time, he starts to see the evidence that like these things actually did happen. This is actually real. And, uh, I wanted the two timelines because I wanted like, as you see an origin story unfold, you get to see how it's shaping Jason, how it's changing him from the inside out. And
Hmm.
one of the major themes that keeps echoing across the series is that sometimes whenever we do things, even if it doesn't look like it's going to succeed in its own context, right, like it looks like we're going to be colossal failures. Sometimes that perseverance, sometimes that story of I didn't give up when things were at their very worst will be something someone else needs down the line in order to help them keep going. And that's kind of how the two timelines fit together. Like and Arden's journey is helping Jason to fulfill his own.
Mm. Okay. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I can't even, I've never written dual timeline, so I'm like one, I pick one person, I talk about one, So I'm always enthralled when people, do way more than I could possibly ever think or imagine. But I love that you do connect them. And that is something, that theme of one person doing so it helps somebody else down the line is I think something most readers can resonate with. It'll resonate with
Yeah,
them, connect because,
yeah,
right, we don't understand the domino effects that happen
yeah,
in our lives when we do something. And we may never live to see the domino effects, right?
exactly. Yeah,
And so we just, yeah, we have to just do what we can and let God
yeah,
take care of the rest, right? But
yeah. Be faithful in what we're called to and let him handle the rest.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what was important to you about starting their arcs in kind of a pressure cooker? Why did you choose to go with that?
Um, well, for immediate interest, part of it.
Right, we have to put
Uh,
our characters through
yeah,
the pressure cooker. I love that analogy, right? Yeah, we gotta put them in the pressure cooker and then just keep turning
yeah,
and tightening it up.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
But I mean, honestly, the best way I think to see someone's character and for someone's character to develop is to,
mm,
have pressure on you. I mean, that's what God does to shape us, right? He allows things into our lives that are going to press us and push us, and basically, and this is one of the other themes of the story is, it kind of takes our moorings out of this world and it puts them where He ultimately wants them, and that's kind of what they had to go through. Like the hard things are the things that pull us to Him most forcefully. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I love that you did that because I know for me personally, and I'm sure for many readers, we don't like doing hard things.
no, no, I
You
certainly
know,
don't.
no, we don't like doing hard things. So, that again helps us to grow personally as well, and which is, just a great writing style. I mean, some people write to entertain, but ultimately we want people to walk away changed from our books, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, and so
That's
by having them play that out, might really bring that about for somebody as they finish reading. Yeah.
That's what my ethos for writing fiction is. It's that, fiction should be escapist and everything, but at the end of the day, whenever somebody finishes that last page, I want them to be able to better face the world that they live in because they faced, mirrors of it, uh, like a semblance of it in the story world.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And which we're going to get to next. But I think and I think I think this is why Jesus told parables, right? Because sometimes
yeah,
we don't see it for ourselves, but when we hear it through a story, I think it
exactly.
does something in our brain and like just really sinks in more than if we just were faced with it front on.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. I read a study some years back from a university that showed that the way the brain processes storytelling is
Hmm.
the same way it processes lived events. So, like when you're hearing a story, when you're reading a story, your brain is processing it just like you've lived through it yourself. So, in
Mm.
a real way, stories really do build us. They really do kind of change us. So,
Oh, no, that's
yeah.
cool. I'm glad you added
Yeah.
that. That's really good. All right, so let's go talk about world building because I
Hmm.
know for speculative um, genre that you guys have an imagination that goes way beyond anything like I could ever imagine. You have to build basically a world from scratch. And in your book, you have some interesting settings. Um, you've got, I'm going to try to say these, Arnuk, the East
Yeah.
Asian influence realm of Chai.
Jai. Yeah.
Chai. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got the fortress city of Udamar. Udamar.
Ordemer. Yeah.
Or Ordemer. Okay.
Yeah.
See? Yeah, probably should have practiced this with you before we came on.
It's cool.
But, so, your readers encountered this all the way back in book one, and these are
Hmm.
rich, vivid places. What inspired you to create these unique cultures and your architectural choices to create a world where these characters live and move?
Well, I mean, so whenever I first started the series, I was pretty heavily influenced by Lord of the Rings. So
Mhm.
a lot of the cultures there are kind of inspired by the way Tolkien portrayed. So like the Ordemer Ords, they're like they're dwarfs, but they're not like fantasy dwarfs. They're like based off of the Picts who lived in Scotland.
Okay.
Uh, and So there's some of that, there's some blending of that, but then like as the series began to grow, as it began to develop, and the world began to develop, a lot of it was like, okay, well I've moved over here in the map, and I know what's happened in this place, and I know what's happened to these people. What would life look like for people who live near them, and what would their culture maybe look like, and how would the dynamic of this place affect this place, and like it just kind of gradually dominoed and out into the like greater continent, like because one thing I love to do is I love drawing my own maps and getting like a feel for like where things are. And then, like as you're sketching out a map, you might put in a mountain range, and then suddenly it's like, well, whoa, wait, if there are mountains here, that changes everything because like, now these people who live here can't be talking to these people over here without great effort, so they have to go around. Well, what would that do to the people who live down to the south of them? They would now be kind of like middlemen, right? Like they would be like exchanging goods and stuff between the two groups, and that would affect who they are, right? So part of it is like it was an exercise in just like letting creativity flow, just like letting, uh, you know, start placing things on a map and just seeing things as they grow and they develop, and and then some of them came about through like, functions of the story, like okay, I know they're going to be passing through this area, so I need to kind of start thinking about what kind of people would live here and that kind of thing. And some of them are emblematic of other things. Like there's at one point they pass through a town and it's filled with like a bunch of crooks and stuff, basically, because it's like a corrupt mining town. And because the town is basically owned by the mining company, they let kind of like some rougher elements in and that kind of thing. And like, some like what I really like to do is let the setting and the characters and the events kind of like shape each other in turn.
Hmm.
So like, like the setting determines who can live where and what can happen there. But as events unfold, those start to affect the setting and they start to affect the characters. And as the characters make decisions, they shape what can happen in the future and they start to impact their world. So they each kind of build into each other. And and then I'm also just a huge fan of history and studying like, ancient cultures and stuff. So uh a lot of the places are inspired by places that I really wished I could visit, and fusions of cultures and myths and legends and stuff about different places, coming together and trying to be new and fresh with things, but also like, you know, clinging to like the archetypes and the things that drew me in from real world history and that kind of thing.
Okay, I'm just sitting here and I have like 5 million questions going through my head as I listen to you. So let's start with the one about the maps. Okay, so you like to draw your own maps. So do
hmm
these ideas come to you like while you're walking, driving, taking a shower? I mean, where do they start?
Uh, uh, anywhere, any, my mind wanders pretty easily. Uh, but yeah, so yeah, I mean, I've had ideas come to me in the shower. A lot of times while I'm driving to work, I have about a 45-minute commute, so I'm sitting there kind of by myself for 45 minutes. It's pretty fertile ground for just spiraling off like, thoughts leading into other thoughts, and then suddenly I'm thinking about, well, like, well, what if such and such character, like went down into like this subterranean cave and like, well, how did the cave form? Why is the cave there? What's in the cave? Like, and just all the spiral of questions that come off of like starting to think about one particular thing, and then suddenly now like now it's becoming a scene, like what's happening in the cave? Why is this cave important? How does it affect the story? And then sometimes the answer is this doesn't really affect the story. It just seems like a cool thing to have in the world. And then, I filed that away. Like I'm building a little encyclopedia of like lore and history and stuff that goes with the world that, you know, there's not room to talk about it in the pages of the book, whether
Yeah, but
because it
so
was
you
just
need to have that information to
yeah.
cross-reference and double check.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if you drop it in a line in dialogue, it still has to be
Yeah.
correct and true to
Exactly.
that. Yeah. So
Exactly.
I mean, since this is sorry, something's bothering me. Since this is a fantasy world you've created,
Mhm.
and I'm imagining a whole wall in your house with just this map that you have drawn out. But do you use pictures? I mean, do like Pinterest type stuff? Do you go on there and research or comic
Um,
books or, I mean, or is it just straight full out of your imagination?
Um, well, I'd like to say that, but I kind of see like everything we make as being, inspired in some way by things we've had before.
Hmm.
So part of it's just like, like I said, I'm a nerd about history and a lot of history books are filled with maps. So I've just gotten accustomed to like seeing like maps, and this is how coastal topography tends to look. And this is
Hmm.
how, like if you have mountains, then if you're going to have water, then it's going to come from a higher elevation, lower elevation, and you can't really have trees in a completely dry and barren area, like that kind of thing. So uh some of it's just, my familiarity with maps. And then like I said, sometimes places sprout up in the story because there's a functional purpose that needs to be served. Like one place got onto the map because I needed them to have a place to stay overnight.
Mm,
Like
okay.
so, otherwise that tiny little blip of a place wouldn't be on the map. But since they had to stay there, I was like, well, that needs to go there. So,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I love making maps. I love like because it really does. It gives you a chance to start to like just dream about like what this world is, and you start to find like little stories and like and as those stories build, it gives the place character, and then you can kind of, like you said, just slip in little things in dialogue or a little note, like noticing, like, like a strange statue or something in distance, and it just gives it character, it gives it a flavor all its own. And the more you can do that, the more interesting the world becomes, and the more interesting the world becomes, the more I feel like readers start to want to like explore that world with you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, that's very true. And I think, I mean, it's so hard to take what's in our head and put it down on paper, right?
yeah,
It's I mean, that's the writer's struggle. We have
yeah,
all these ideas in our head, but getting them on paper is really hard. And
yeah.
so I'm just thinking to myself, he's already got to write the story, but now he's got to take this world that he has built in his head and also get that across because the world is so vital to your story.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And that's why I said I like to really pull in like really like everyday things. So like there's a scene where in one of the books where they're just drinking some coffee at a
Mhm.
cafe, and
Yeah.
people have their own like imagination what a cafe is, and sorry.
Bless you.
And then while they're there, then they're also talking about this like ancient quest, and like, and then it's that merger of like things that people are familiar with, and they can use their imagination to fill in the backdrop somewhat, while I'm giving them stuff that is completely fresh and new and fabricated, and for the story. And uh and I think that if you didn't strike that balance just right, then like people feel like they belong in that world, and you don't have to give a huge amount of explanation, a huge amount of description. You can let people kind of fill in the gaps, and just just focus them in on the things that are like completely unique and you really want them to hone in on.
Yeah. Right, because we
Uh,
don't want to, I mean, part of the beauty of reading a book is letting your own imagination, right? Because how
exactly.
many times
Yeah.
have you heard somebody go, well, that's not how I pictured him when they make him into a
Yeah.
movie, right? That's not how I thought he
Yeah.
would look, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, we do want our readers to have their own imaginations. But I know that it is hard when you're creating a whole new world, right?
Yeah.
But I love that you blend in the ordinary life that would let them, they don't have to use their imagination for that because they
Yeah.
know, but, being
Yeah.
able to do that. Okay, so let me ask you, where do these names come from? Do you have like a book of fantasy names?
it's a I've got a wide variety of sources. So a lot of names, especially towards the middle of whenever I was writing the series, I started taking, because some of the cultures were inspired by real life cultures. I started pulling names that like from those cultures that inspired the ones in the book, and playing with them. Like I take like a starting portion of a name, and then take an ending portion of a name and kind of fuse them together. And some people do have names that are explicitly like they're a word and they mean something, like Count Eidolon. uh that's a spirit, that's an evil spirit, effectively. And I forget which language that comes from, but Eidolon means evil,
People.
evil entity. And of course he's a bad guy, so
It worked.
yeah. And then other ones are just it just sounds fun, like a fun name.
Yeah.
And a few names I was actually gifted by my son. My son, whenever he was younger, would come up with his own names for like characters he would be playing with and stuff. And uh, a few of them I kind of really liked, and it was like, hey, buddy, you mind if I use that? Yeah, okay, Daddy, that's fine.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So, what was I going to ask about? I had another question about the setting, but I don't want to
Mm,
get bogged down here. Oh, well, your encyclopedia. That's what I wanted to talk about.
yeah.
So, is it like a really like I know it's not probably I'm sure it's a digital encyclopedia,
Yeah.
but I mean, I would imagine if it were printed out, it would be pretty complex and pretty thick.
It's getting there. It's getting pretty complex and pretty thick. Because I think whenever I was working on the maps for this book, I counted up the number of places, and there was over 100 cities on the map,
Oh, wow.
and then there was over 150 topographic features, so like rivers, mountains, uh, forests, and that kind of thing. So that's over 250 I think it was I think it ended up being close to 300 like place names on the map if you have it all out. And then the fun thing about another reason why I like telling you in two different timelines is you have the map from one era, and then you can turn the page and it's a map from the newer era, and you see like places changing
Thank
names
you.
and
Mhm.
countries shifting their borders and like and geographic features slightly altering and stuff like that. And that's just a lot of fun to me. I think that's really cool.
That is
And
cool.
then also that feeds back into that encyclopedia. So like I have like sections that are like purely like physical facts. Like this country is, X miles from this country, and they have these borders, and this is the chief city, like, statistical type information about it. And then go a little bit further down, and then I start getting into, okay, this is the historical events, and I start with the ones that are relevant to the book, because like the book I'm working on at the time, where I add an entry, and then kind of build off of that after the fact. Mainly because this encyclopedia has a super functional purpose. Like it's supposed to help me not make mistakes and continuity and stuff like that. So like I have like a timeline built into it and stuff, so that I know like, well, this event happened at this time, and then it's also to help me figure out, well, okay, they're going to travel this far, this many days, this many months, how much time is going to pass, how far are they actually physically going, and especially for Anargen's era, that's really a big deal, because like, they can't go anywhere too fast.
Sure.
And then in Jason's era, it's a little easier and a little freer, because they have rail lines, they have dirigibles, they have cars, so they have a little bit more freedom and flexibility of movement over longer distances. But still, like, it helps me, like, you know, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. Oh, okay, well, this seems to be a little soon for this to happen, because they should still be getting travel,
Oh, I
that
see.
kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. So do you, I want to, my mind says research, but I mean, I
Mhm.
guess you have to research the 1910s and 1920s to know what's going on,
Yeah.
right? You have to research
Yep.
1600s, and then you've got to combine all of that. Do you spend a lot of time researching stuff first, or are you writing and researching at the same time? How does your process with this work? Because it's so intricate.
Yeah. Um, so it's kind of a blend. Like, to a certain extent, I write what I know. So like I'll have already like read about a certain place or certain culture, and that's part of why I like get excited about telling a certain story, because I, found something interesting, like hee hee, yay.
Yeah.
Uh, but then like as I'm writing, what I invariably end up doing, I think it helps make things a little bit more organic, is like as I'm writing, if I come across a place where I'm like, well, I really need to see this myself. Like I need to like know what they would have worn here, or I need to know like, what kind of car could they have had here? Like for what kind of transportation would they reasonably have had here? Um, and for instance, like there's a scene where a car um almost hits one of the main characters, and it was at nighttime. And I was like, well, wouldn't those lights have been blinding and stuff? So I researched it and found like, no, in the 1920s, car headlamps were extremely dim. So like you wouldn't even necessarily see the car coming because of how dim they were. So if it's at night and it's raining, then that, of course there's a good chance that you get hit by that. So like little things like that. It's, targeted research, I guess is the best way to put it. Like as I'm building out the story, and I'm like, okay, I need a real quick sanity check. Like, could this have happened?
Mhm.
Does this make sense? Does this look like it should in this context? And then you end up spending like 3 hours learning about like Chinese traditional clothing across the
Mhm.
centuries, or I got into a really nice study of like uh, medieval weapons that are uh blades but aren't like traditional like swords and stuff. Like they're ones that are like attached to ropes, and found this one uh weapon that's actually like that's used in Malaysia, or was historically used in the Southeast Asian countries, that's like multiple blades that are super thin,
Mhm.
and they act like little whips
Oh,
where
okay.
they get swung. So yeah, so there's all kinds of like interesting things. And um and I've written historical fiction before, so like it honestly feels very similar. because you're trying to put people in a world that they can't go and just visit themselves. Like you can hear about it, you can read about it, you can see things left over from it, but you can't be there exactly.
Yeah.
So it ends up being very similar for writing a fantasy world. Like, you try to give people tokens of things that they can hold on to and know and recognize, and then you start trying to map out things that'll be eye-catching and interesting and fit organically in the space, but still like be something more, be something to, you know, to hold their attention to like a particular moment or a particular place. Because that's ultimately the intention, right? Is like, you have this like really interesting setting, you have these really interesting characters with magic weapons and events and stuff going on, but at the end of the day, like there's that undercurrent, there's that like, why is this uh why is this moment worth holding on to and getting invested in and stuff, and that's usually whenever you try and like weave in something of substance to, stick with them.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this substance because you've got some really strong themes and spiritual threads
Mm.
in your writing, and it makes the spiritual symbolism feel very organic. So, the quest mirrors discipleship. The High King is deeply present, and both Jason and Arnagant, say it again for me.
Anargen.
Anargen, wrestle
Yeah.
with purpose, grief, and calling. So, what spiritual truths were you exploring um, as you wrote? And was there like an overarching spiritual theme for the entire series? And what is there one specifically for this book? And what might have been some others that you had in the other books?
So most of the books in some way or shape or form reflect back to like a very early theme I latched onto, and it was one I mentioned earlier, and that's you know, the things we do echo across time. So how I respond in any given moment, how I live out my faith, how I show up to the things God's put before me, whether I feel like I can handle them or not, whether I feel like it's going to work out the way I want it to or not, really has a chance to impact other people. And I'm reminded of the scripture that says that, the things that were written before were written for our benefit, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's that kind of like the weight of what's come before shapes us type thing, or
Yeah.
has the potential to shape us. So that's a major theme of the series. And again, why I wanted to tell a story about storytelling. And then in this one, it gets into some heavier things because there's some bad things that happen. Um, and it kind of gets into, you know, does do we ever get placed in situations where, um, it's just abjectly bad? And what does that mean? Like, what does it mean whenever something just seems like there isn't like that moment where everything just becomes okay,
Hmm.
right? And dealing with that and trying to understand, whenever God leads us through hard places and it doesn't seem like there's going to be a great reversal. And there's some grieving that goes on in the story. There's some characters who do not make it through the story. Um, and one of the major things that one of the characters really kind of, one of Arya, Jason's, and this is fun. Apparently, I learned the history of like different terms of endearment. So girlfriend was a term that came around right around the 1920s.
Okay.
So his girlfriend, his fiance actually at that time, she's been prodding him to like, really actually pay attention to what happened in an Arden story because she's concerned that he's not getting the lesson that was being conveyed in those histories. And he's like, well, why do I need to read that anyway? It's clearly a happy ending, right? Like, and then she poses a question, well, okay, what is a happy ending? Because, how long does a happy ending have to last to be considered a happy ending? Because, all of us someday face death. All of us face hardship, after the happy ending in most fairy tales and stuff. If people ever pick back up the story again to tell a sequel, things aren't okay. There's something new that's gone wrong, right? So how long does it have to stay happy and that kind of thing before it's a true happy ending? And of course, he has to work through that throughout the story to try and understand, well, what would a real happy ending look like? And
Mhm.
uh, I won't give away my answers for that, but like
Clearly, please no. We want people to
but
no
yeah, so
spoilers.
that's a key one. And especially where this is the final one, like
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of leave off with some thoughtful things. And yeah, there I was surprised. Like I was expecting like, lots of like big triumphant like battle moments and stuff like that, but there were several instances of just like, kind of heartfelt intimate things that happen between the characters, and I was surprised by that as I was writing it.
Yeah. I don't think I think we're as writers we're always surprised when something pops up. It was like I didn't see that coming. And people think
Yeah,
that that sounds funny or cliche, but it's just so true,
it
right?
is. It
You
really
can
is. Yeah.
say something is going to be in a, you're like, oh, I'll just have a police officer come in and, check something out. And the next thing you know, you're like, wait a minute, he would be a good another character.
Yeah.
You're just like, I never saw that coming, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
true. Those strange things happen. So, okay. Well, you have so many books in the series, seven.
Hmm.
Do they have to be read in order or do they stand alone? Would it make a difference? And if so, where would somebody brand new start?
So as I was where I got to book four, I realized very quickly that not everybody is up for a seven book series. And so where I was writing book four, I was very conscious about trying to make that one like a reintroduction. So like you could hop into the story at that point and still mostly understand what's going on,
Mhm.
but also kind of be freshly introduced to like a new set of characters who are also going to kind of like start their journey and and they eventually become a major part of the later books as well. Um, but just kind of get people a place where they could come into this midway if they want to. Another thing I did was for book five and book seven, there's the story thus far
Yeah.
section,
Yeah.
and it goes over all of the major events of the previous book. So if you really, really don't want to like, if you really just want to jump into this very last book and get the ending without having to see everything that came before fully fleshed out and save yourself like about 600,000 words, uh, you can do that. You can jump into it there.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, I wrote the whole series because I really want people to read it.
Yeah, of
So I
course. Yeah,
was,
well, they can start at book seven. They just have to go back and work their way through.
yeah, yeah,
That's fine. Yeah, when
uh,
you have the story this far, it reminds me, I see in my mind what I see is that scrolling text from Star
oh, from
Wars,
Star Wars, yeah, the
at the
crawl at
start
the,
of every
yeah,
movie, and that's what I'm like when I hear that. What's this that happened so far? I imagine your words rolling up the page.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's good. That's good because really with a seven-part series, yeah, some people will need to catch up, especially because books, unless I know a lot of people will wait until a series is complete and
yeah,
read so that they don't
yes,
have to
yeah,
wait, right? But if they
yeah,
have to wait, and usually they have to wait 9 months to a year, sometimes
yeah,
longer, you forget what
yeah,
happened,
that's
right?
true. Yeah.
You do. And so it's nice that you do that little refresher for your readers. That's really good. So, um, a few questions just about your process of writing before we start wrapping things up. Um, how do you, I know when I finished my series, I was like, I'd spent 5 years with these people. And
Mhm.
it was kind of like I had to let go and say goodbye. And although somebody asked me,
Yeah.
are you going to take one of those characters and write a spinoff? And I was like, no, I'm done with these people. I've 5 years. We're good. We're good. I
Yeah.
know you. I don't need to know any more about them or anything like that. How do you
Yeah.
feel about this now coming to an end? And are you happy? Are you sad? Are you ready to let these characters go?
Uh, I'm all the things right now. Because I started writing this series when I was in high school. It was really weird. Like my my creative writing teacher asked us to write a 3 to 5 page fairy tale,
Uh-huh.
and I turned in a 20-something page mini novella of an epic fantasy, and thankfully she didn't take away any points or anything, but like that was kind of the start. And for 20, this is actually the 20th year since I started it.
Mm.
And so most of my life, the majority of my life, I've had this story like in me in some way being told and shaped and built out. And I, you know, it's it's a very bittersweet feeling to like know that like, I've reached this like lifelong goal, like this like final story. Um and I I fell in love with the characters, in location. And uh yeah, yeah, I don't know. I guess in some ways this story is always going to be with me because I still plan to like, continue to like write some things about the story world and stuff,
Mhm.
and finish out that encyclopedia and stuff. But I don't know. It like I said, it's been such a big part of my life. It's hard to imagine it being done now.
I can't imagine. I mean, like I said, I only spent 5 years with mine, so to spend 20, that,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I think you have to like grieve the ending, right? We have to
yeah,
let yourself grieve. I read a really good article that talked about, when you finish a series like that, that's been so up close and personal with you and always with you. That's what I don't
yeah,
readers understand is that our stories are always with us when we're working on
yeah,
it, right?
yeah,
They seep in and you're like, oh, that could do this or I could do that. And so they just become so ingratiated with us
yeah,
that yeah, when they're done, that's a hard thing. So that's why I asked,
yeah,
how you were feeling because I remember how it felt in that story. And I'm imagining now that I know it's 20 years, it's like, oh wow. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I can imagine you're
yeah.
all the feels for sure.
All the feels, yeah. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Well, now that the story is wrapped because it comes out in just a few weeks, what's next for you? What are you creating a new world or are you taking a break? What's
uh
going on in that mind of yours?
I have a lot of projects. Um and a lot of them were on hold while I was working on this series. And I had to be, it was an exercise in learning discipline
Yeah,
because it
I'm
was like,
sure.
okay, like, ooh, this is going to be a fun story, right? And it was like, no, no, no.
Yep.
This one has deadline.
Yeah.
Deadline. Uh
Yeah.
um
Exactly.
yeah, but I've got a sci-fi story that I've been working on, and it's about halfway through, and a sci fantasy story, so it's kind of like a blend of what this is with some more like futuristic elements thrown in as well.
Hmm.
Um, and then my wife keeps telling me I need to get on it and write her a romance
Yeah, that's
story.
becoming
So
those romanticities are becoming very popular now. So,
yeah, yeah. So I've got several different manuscripts in the work. It's just whichever one, the Lord kind of pulls me aside and says, okay, let's talk about this one, okay?
yeah. Yeah, yeah. I'm always like, Lord, how am I going to have time to write all the ideas that you've planted in my head?
Right?
I do question that because I still have at least 3 to 5 books I could still write.
Yep.
And now mine are not as long as yours. Most of them are probably going to be standalones this time. But yeah, I just wonder how do I write how do I find the time to write all the books that you want to? So, well, I hope you were able to take a break and enjoy the holidays and then figure out where you're going to go. And then there's nothing like a new year to give you, like a flip the page kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Brett, this has been such a treat. Thank you for joining me. Oh, wait, I did have one more question. So you said sci-fi fantasy. So you're not a purist, like you just write fantasy, you just write sci-fi, you just write.
Oh, dear, no, no, no.
No, no,
Yeah,
no.
no. I've always blurred genres. My first book that was published was a historical fiction mystery type story. So,
Okay.
um, yeah. So I've been cross genre and stuff for a long time now, and I have my other major series is a dystopian sci-fi series. So
Okay.
um yeah, so I don't my whole thing has been, I want to tell the story in whatever context it most fittingly belongs to. So if God wants to lead me to a story that needs to be like just pure contemporary romance, I would write a pure contemporary romance or a horror story or wherever he takes me, that's where I'm going to go.
Oh, that's
So
awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you for giving us this behind the scenes look at your series. It has just meant so much to you and to readers over the years. I hope that those of you who are listening will grab the Quest of Fire series, all the books in the series, and especially book 7. Like you said, he's caught you up, and then you can read in, get hooked, and go back and read all the rest. So, um, you can find Quest of Fire, The Unending Light, Book 7 in the series, on the Scrivenings Press website, or of course on Amazon as well, wherever you buy your books. Before I let you go, can you tell our viewers how to connect with you?
yeah, I'm pretty active on Instagram and Facebook. I do have a Twitter profile. I don't check it super often anymore, or X profile.
Yeah.
Don't check it super often, but yeah, I'm always open to receiving messages and connecting with people who love to read and fellow aspiring writers. I really love talking to aspiring writers at events and stuff, and
Yeah.
giving them like, this is the journey I've been on. It's been kind of bumpy, so let me
Yeah.
tell you how to not make it as bumpy.
I know. I had to tell a new author, I was like, yeah, I'm sorry. The next year's probably gonna be pretty rough for you before your book publishes.
Yeah,
And I was like, I'm sorry, I have to tell you, but I'm just keeping it
yeah,
real.
yeah, really. And I mean, that's something people honestly need is like, if you want to embark on writing your own books, then it it's going to be beautiful and it's going to be heartbreaking and it's a journey. Like
Yes.
there's a very small number of people who like it just magically
Yeah.
falls into place.
Yeah.
For everyone else here, where you go through the trenches to get to the.
Absolutely. Yes, they do. So I hope everybody, I will put the links to Brett's website and social media where you can connect with him. But thank you so much again for joining us. And thank you, audience members, for joining us for another Scriv Talk interview. We will be back in just a few weeks with more wonderful Scrivenings Press authors to share their new and upcoming books. And we hope that you will be back with us. If you want to make sure you don't miss any notifications, make sure you hit the subscribe button on our channel so you'll never miss a thing. But anyway, we will see you again next time on Script Talk. Bye bye.